fix myself.
I think we're recording. So thank you everyone for joining me, Civilla Morgan, and Haneefah Mohammed for this very special webinar during World Childless Week. We are here to celebrate the legacy, resilience, and impact of Black childless ancestors on our collective heritage. So throughout this next hour, we plan to take you on a journey into the lives of the women we have chosen to talk about today, as well as what they mean for us and how they have touched our lives. So as Steph already said, please feel free to post questions in the Q&A and any comments in the chat, and we will do our best to keep an eye on it. Now, I have a habit of keep talking, so you never know. It takes a lot to stop me. So I will do my best to keep an eye on them as well. But I know Haneefah and Civilla will be looking out as well. Before I ask Civilla and Haneefah to introduce themselves and share why they chose to participate in this webinar, I thought I'd start by introducing myself. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Yvonne John. I live in the UK. I'm author of Dreaming of a Life Unlived, which is intimate stories and portraits of women without children. I'm an activist and a public speaker, and I speak about the women of colour's experience around infertility. I've appeared on numerous television programs and interviews, and you can Google me and find more about me. I'm a graduate of the Gateway Women year-long Plan B mentorship program and a trained facilitator for the Gateway Women Reignite weekend workshops. I absolutely love creating inclusive spaces for Black women and women of colour to openly talk about our childless journey. And this leads me to why we're here today. So one of the things the three of us have spoken about before was that as Black women, we found that we had to find our own heroes, especially growing up. There wasn't many Black heroes that we could look out for. And as childless women, we definitely had to go in search of looking out for those Black women that we could find that resonated with our stories and who we are today. For me, around 3-ish years ago, I took part in Charmaine Simpson's Black History Studies course on Black women in British history. And I remember throughout the webinar, the sessions that we were doing, I kept asking, every time Charmaine would mention a Black woman, I would ask, does she have children? Because it felt very important for me to know that the women that we were celebrating didn't have children. So I could resonate, I could see myself in them, and I could know that actually there are some wonderful women out there that I could look up to. Because also, our voices are absent in these spaces. And ever since then, every time I see a post about a Black woman, one of my Black ancestors, I always then go back onto Google and I'm looking to know, is that woman childless? And that led me to create my NOMO role models Pinterest board, and I also blog about these women because, as I said, it was just important for me to hear these voices and know that, these women existed in our history. So, on my Pinterest board, I have women like Bell Hooks, Valerie Thomas, Claudia Jones, Octavia Spencer, Marian Anderson, Teresa Ellis Ross, Angela Davis, and there are so many more. For me, the three I've chosen today are Dame Eugenia Charles. She was born in 1919, died in 2005. So she was around during my lifetime. She was the first woman lawyer and the first woman prime minister to serve in the Caribbean. So she served as the prime minister of Dominica from 1980 to 1995. And being of Dominican parentage, my dad being from Dominica, I really did have to focus on her today. And I know, Civilla, you've done a podcast on her, episode 134 in December 2020, I believe. So it was really interesting hearing your reflections on her, because she, as I said, she was in my lifetime, so I know of her, but it was only till recently, it wasn't until recently that I realized that she didn't have children. Mm-hmm. So that was really interesting, and we're going to come on to her a bit more as we go along. Mary Kenner, also I'm focusing on, she was born in May 1912. She was an American inventor most noted for her development of the adjustable sanitary belt. And she died in 2006 at 93. And I'm choosing Bessie Coleman, who was born on Jan 26, 1892, and she died in 1926, at age 34. And she was the first Black woman to earn a pilot's license in 1992. And I think I've got my dates wrong here. I'm saying 1992, and she died in 1926. That doesn't make any sense. I think it was 1892. Not even then. Anyway, she got her pilot's license 2 years before Amelia Earhart, which a lot of people know about. And she was the first American woman to stage a public flight in America. So I'm going to stop there for now, and I'm going to hand over to Civilla and Haneefah to introduce themselves and to say why they're here today and what three women they're going to focus on. So Haneefah, I'll go with you first.
Okay, hi. Thanks so much, Yvonne. Good evening, everyone. It's so good to be here. Do you know what? When Yvonne was speaking, I was thinking just how blessed and privileged we are, that we are able to talk freely and to celebrate women, our childless ancestors, because so much of the talk around childlessness, in my experience, it's certainly often in our community, is around shame and blame and what's wrong with you and so on. Now we're going to talk about this a bit later, but it just occurred to me just how how good it feels. It just feels good to sit here and talk openly and comfortably and feel no sense of shame and hurt and uh, being discriminated, feeling discriminated towards when we are talking about the experience of being childless women and celebrating being childless women. And I mentioned it to someone today, and I could see from her expression that the word celebrating our childless women was something that she kind of had to take stock of and think about. But I'm so glad that we're doing that today. So I just wanted to put that out there because it just filled me up when I was talking about it. When you were talking about. So to introduce myself, so I'm Haneefah Mohammed and I live in the UK. And I am a mental health practitioner by profession. I'm also a life coach. I'm an author, a spoken word poet, and there are various other things. All of the things that we as women do, all of these hats that we wear at different stages in our life, and feeling blessed to wear all of them. And in terms of my experience of my life as a childless woman, it's not something I envisaged. I always imagined as a 14, 15-year-old that I would have children, I'm going to have my babies, and life is going to be wonderful. And of course, it didn't happen quite like that. And so much water has gone under the bridge since then, and I've had so many experiences around um, being a childless woman. But you know what? While she's on screen, I'm going to actually put it out there, that I have Yvonne to thank for me being here right now and talking about my experience, because it was Yvonne being a speaker at an event some years ago. And Yvonne, you probably remember, it was what, 10 years or more ago?
I think it was over 10 years, I'm sure.
Over 10
Yeah,
years
I'm
ago.
sure it was.
Stunning, yeah. And I was in the audience, and you were talking about you were talking about your baby, really, which was your book. You were talking about your book, and you were talking about your experience of being a childless woman. And I sat there, and just like I felt just a moment ago, I thought, but Yvonne's telling my story, and I'd never heard a woman talk, I'd never heard anyone talk about being childless and talk about it without being tearful and without there being shame and blame attached to it. And it was just so, yeah, of course, Yvonne shared her experience of and she'll share her own experience as we go along. But I just felt in the moment when I watched her and listened to her that this was a story that I've lived some aspects of that story, and it was just so it was a game changer for me, because in that moment I knew that I didn't have to be ashamed about not being a woman who hasn't given birth to a child. I didn't have to be ashamed of that. It's been a journey since then. And there have been some ups and downs, some highs and some lows, but I know it's all part of my journey of embracing and celebrating myself as a woman, not as a mother first, but as a woman second, but as a woman first. And knowing, recognizing that actually being a mother in the sense of a woman who has given birth to her child, is not something that has to define me as a person. I am already enough as I am, and I can embrace that. So in terms of the women that I want to talk about, I haven't done an awful lot of work on that. I have thought of some women. I have thought of women like, and forgive me if I'm taking on a name or two that somebody else has, but I'm thinking of Hattie McDaniel. I think she was mentioned once, and Cicely Tyson, she was mentioned. Wonderful actresses in their own right. But you never look at these women and think, or I'll say that I've looked at these women, never thought, do they have children? Do they not have children? But actually coming into the understanding that they don't, or at least not that we know of, is interesting then, because it means that not having a child, not giving birth to a child, hasn't stopped them in their choice of career and being the wonderful women that they are today, and having that they have been, and that they've been presented to us on the screen and so on. It's not about whether or not you've got children. It's about who you are as a person. So that's all I'll say at this moment in time. But as I say, just feeling so blessed to be here, and I'm sure that we'll talk more as we go along. Yeah.
It'd be interesting. So it's really great to have you here as well, Haneefah, and look forward to actually exploring more about Hattie and Cicely as we go along. Civilla, hello.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Yvonne. Yvonne, thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I really appreciate it. I love our collaboration. So thank you very much, first of all. Everyone, I'm Civilla Morgan. I am calling or tuning in, hailing from the US. I'm here in Central Florida. And I am a podcaster of 9 years. And I podcast about the Childless Not by Choice experience. And I may look away from time to time because I'm talking to you from my iPhone, but my iPad is to the left of me. So bear with me as I look to the left and look at my notes for each of the person that I chose. And as I listened to you and Haneefah, I thought about shame, because a lot of times when I hear from people, when they hear a particular episode that they like, a lot of the women from countries in Africa, for instance, talk about the shame of being childless and the shame that's put up on them if they can't produce. Although I'm sure even the men in their lives know that it could be 50-50 why they are able to bear a child. And so I talk about that quite a bit on the podcast. I'm at episode 168 right now. I just sent my 100, either 167 or 168. I stopped counting, but I just sent the September episode to my podcast producer, so I'm waiting for that to come back. But diverting just a little bit, I did choose Hattie McDaniel, Harriet Tubman, and Anita Hill. And I chose them all for very different reasons. Hattie McDaniel, I felt like I chose her because I never married. In addition to never having children, I never married. Hattie McDaniel married 4 times, and it seems like none of her marriages stuck. And it kind of resonated with me because none of the men that I interacted with, it just never stuck, And you can think of blaming yourself for things never sticking. Well, what's wrong with me? It must be me. And the fact is that it just goes that way sometimes. That's just what happens sometimes. And I think when we get to figure out who we are as human beings, which doesn't happen until nowish in our, 40s and 50s. That's when we realize that we are good enough and that we don't have to take on the shame that society tries to put on us for being childless or husbandless, or just the way our lives didn't work out, or whatever it is that didn't happen for us. That's society's issue, not ours. And so that's why I chose Hattie McDaniel, Harriet Tubman, because she was a boss. I love that. I love women. I call it the girl boss thing. Harriet Tubman was a girl boss, okay? And then Anita Hill, she went and told her truth in front of all of these men. They didn't believe her, they didn't trust her, but she's still living her best, most relevant and joyful life. And that's what I love about these three women that I chose. They did their thing. They knew who they were. They encompassed and enveloped who they were. And that's something I always talk about is if you love you, there's nothing anybody else can say. That's why I chose these women.
So I am looking forward to getting to know them some more as well. And I'm not familiar with Anita Hill, so she's going to be one I'm going to add to my no-mo board as well. But as you were talking, especially when you mentioned about Anita Hill and about shame, Eugenia Charles was in my mind, because one of the things I learned from your podcast was that she was told that she was sterile and she wore cheap underwear. Now, there's always this notion that there's something wrong with us when we present in this patriarchal world that says we should have had children. And given that this was a lady who was into politics and in her time would have been a very, very male-dominated world, already they didn't know what to do with her. So you can imagine that as a woman, she would have been put down a lot and stereotyped a lot. So the fact that she never got married and she never had children, I can imagine it's almost like they villainized her and created this, and she was called the Iron Lady of the Caribbean. There's always this narrative they have to give us because they don't know what else to do with us. So it's always like we have to put you down or see you as less than because you never fulfilled what society said you should have fulfilled. And it just makes me wonder when I think about Eugenia and everything that she experienced, just to get to where she was, and the fact that she became Prime Minister of Dominica, and she was Prime Minister for like 15 years. She had a good innings. How much she would have had to fight and be confident in herself. And it makes me wonder what messages she had to be able to stand so strong. Because we always perceive somebody being as confident when they're in a certain position, but it doesn't mean they necessarily are.
Right.
So, she's somebody I'd love to have around my dinner table to kind of ask these questions, because it's like, what were your messages? What meant that you could stand so strong? And strong is a word that I'm struggling with to own because of the strong Black woman narrative.
Right.
When we're seen as strong, it's like we don't need help, or,
yeah.
We don't have any. I don't know. I don't
be
use the
comforted.
word. Yeah, yes, this is it, and and I struggle with that. But it does make me wonder what it takes for a woman like Eugenia, and like the women you've also mentioned, to have overcome, their upbringing, to overcome all the hurdles and the resistance they would have had to be in the positions to do what they would have done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who was their comfort? I'm trying to remember, but I think Eugenia Hill's father, I'm not Eugenia Charles's father was in the picture. It's how many episodes ago?
Well, I couldn't see anything that he wasn't in the picture. He was a fruit exporter and then became a banker. And from what I've gathered, he was very present and, I can't remember how many siblings she had, but he was there to really make sure they got educated.
Right.
So probably was quite a role model for her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I would imagine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Good. That's
Well,
great. So thank you.
So I'm kind of thinking of, and was it Anita Hill you mentioned, Civilla?
yes, Anita Hill, she used to work for one of the 9 Supreme Court justices, a current Supreme Court justice, who basically was abusive to her when she worked for him. And they were going to put him up, you know, they had suggested him as a Supreme Court justice, so they were having the hearings and all of that. So she wanted to tell them what kind of person he was before he was nominated and put into place. But, you know, it was the 90s. And when you look back on the 90s, at this time, it almost feels like the 70s because it was so male dominated. Yeah, Clarence Thomas. It was so male dominated that, you know, it was all men that were listening to her story, and they just found it so difficult to believe that could not be. Did he really do that with the Coca-Cola? Oh, I just can't believe he would do something like that.
Of course not.
Yeah, why would he do that?
Mm.
So they didn't believe her, and there were 4 other women waiting to testify as well, and they never heard those women. And so she was berated and just really verbally abused in the press for a long time. And she ended up, you know, she told her truth, and that was good enough for her. She's continued with her life. She's a professor. She's all types of things now. She's, and I could look to my left, but she's a lawyer, educator, author, a professor of social policy, law, and women's studies at Brandeis University. That's a big time university. And she's a faculty member of the university's Heller School for Social Policy and Management. So she's doing her thing regardless. She didn't allow this foolishness to you know, to bring her down. So you know, she's just somebody that I really, I think she chose not to have children. In fact, I don't know how true this is, but apparently, I don't know if she's still in this relationship. She is or was in a relationship where she maintained her own home, and her boyfriend maintained his own home. And I'm like, well, you know, that's not a bad idea.
I feel
Hey,
that feels like my idea.
that's old 22nd century stuff. I love that. Yeah, yeah.
But
There are
it shows. Sorry, Haneefah, go on.
No, I was going to say I'm just going to say, just on the side, there are stories of women in the you know, celebrities who have that kind of lifestyle now, and it's meant to be. It's seen as oh, it's so revolutionary. It's so new. It ain't.
No,
It ain't.
I
It
love
ain't.
it.
It's been done before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
love it.
it shows me, you know, because what keeps coming up for me is how much, you know, especially in politics. And, you know, we've heard the narratives and the comments about women in politics who don't have children, and how can they invest in our country? How can they actually serve? Because they don't have children, and therefore they don't care about what's going to happen, essentially. And it just makes me, when I think of Anita, when I think of Eugenia, how much have they gone through to fight for their seat at the table? And I even think of Shirley Chisholm, you know, who said, and I think she was the first Black woman elected to Congress in the US.
Yeah.
She said, you know, if they're not going to give you a seat at the table, bring your own chair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
You know, how much of their own chairs do they have to bring to those tables? And probably a megaphone so that they could be heard.
Yeah, exactly. And well, Maya Angelou said, she said, we must stop sitting at tables where love is not being served. So to my mind, if you're not being embraced, if you're not being welcomed, if you're not being accepted, why go there? Just walk away from it.
Yeah.
You don't need to eat at that table. We must stop eating. We must stop sitting down at tables where love is. I just think that's so powerful for me. That is just made up. Yeah.
Make our own tables.
Hell yes. Hell yeah.
Well,
yeah.
You know, as you say that, my mind now goes to Bessie Coleman. So, you know, like, I'm a very adventurous person and I love to travel. So I loved learning about Bessie Coleman, because she was the first Black woman to get her aviation license. And she paved the way for a lot of other women, because she was told, because she's a woman and because she's Black, she cannot be a pilot. And she was in America, and she took some advice where somebody said to her, I think she took a job as a manicurist just to make money, which she didn't like because it's not what she wanted to do. But somebody said to her, just get another job, learn French, and leave the country. And she went to France. I mean, talk about a woman who paved her own way. She didn't sit at that table where there was no love. She brought her own seat. She went to France, and then she studied in one of the top prestigious aviation schools and got her pilot license within 7 months of being there.
Awesome.
And became the pilot she wanted to be.
Yeah, she wasn't going to sit around. She wasn't going to hang around and wait and to be handed something, or thrown a bone. She would just, no, I don't need your bone. I'm going to have my own farm. I'm doing my own thing. Wonderful. I love that. And we talk about the resilience and the strength, the courage and the tenacity that it would have taken in those days, and that it still takes today. So we like to think, some of us like to think that we've made all of these advances, and I'm not saying there haven't been some. I wouldn't say that, but there's still, what I will say is there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
Still a long way to go.
It's unfortunate, but that's the truth.
Sure. Yeah. And that's for women with or without children.
Right.
With or without. So having a child doesn't necessarily give you a passport. Is not your passport. Doesn't open all of those doors for you all of the time. That's what I will say.
No.
As wonderful as motherhood is, I had my niece and my nephew around this weekend, and the mums and that. I'm their mother when I'm around them, even though their mothers are standing there. I'm their mummy around them when I'm around them. I'm whoever they want me to be, actually. Yes, whoever they want me to be. And it's just such a wonderful. Being around children is just it's a privilege, and it's a wonderful experience. But I say again, it is not the thing. I recognize it's not the thing that defines me. Being a woman defines me, and how I strive to become the best woman I can be, best Black woman I can be. Yeah.
So, just thinking about one of the ladies you mentioned, Haneefah, and forgive me because I've forgotten the name. Was it Hattie?
Hattie McDaniels.
Hattie McDaniels. Yeah. Tell me more about her, and kind of when you reflect on what you've just said about, motherhood doesn't define you. And you can. I mean, there are many ways to be a mum, and you've described one of them in terms of your interaction with your nieces and nephews. I wonder how Hattie Daniels factors into kind of your life and how you see yourself and relate with her as being a childless woman.
It's really interesting because as we're talking about her, I'm just seeing her in my head, and I'm seeing her on the screen, and I'm seeing the roles that she would be playing as the kind of, forgive me for saying this, but I'm using the word that I think would have been used at a certain time, the sort of mammy role. And she so she would have played a mother role in the films that she was in. And to my mind, Hattie McDaniels, I would imagine that it would have been very difficult in some ways for her to find herself in that position on the silver screen, where she was constantly playing the sort of, the Black mother roles. But what a powerful role to play. The fact that she even got in through the door is something in itself. And her, again, we talk about her resilience and her tenacity to be there, and to overcome maybe even herself, get past all the shame and whatever else she would have faced, but find herself on the silver screen and find herself in the roles that she was in. I'm just saying, and she resonated. She's a character that we remember. I see her now. I look at her in my mind's eye, and I see her now, and I think of her very, very, and even in the roles that she was in, very bold, and she always had a lot to say. There was always be a cutting little remark that she would make if the man of the house would say something, or the woman of the house would say something. She was just wonderful, and I believe she was in Gone with the Wind. I believe she played in Gone with the Wind. And what a character! She put that woman in her place. I've forgotten the character that played against Clark Gable. But what she had a tongue in her head, and they gave her some quite bold lines for a Black woman speaking to a white woman at that time. But she was wonderful. So it's her strength, it's her courage, it's her resilience, and it's her presence. Even her presence, I just think, go for it. Yeah.
Do you know what strikes me as you're describing her, Haneefah, is the fact that as childless women, we get silenced from parents in the way they see us, and in a way tell us, some directly, some indirectly, that what would we know because we don't have children? So we wouldn't understand what it's like to be a parent. And you get the narrative. As a mother, I can relate to. As a mother, la 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 la. Like, so therefore, us who are not traditional mothers wouldn't possibly understand the pain or the turmoil or the joy or the love of being a parent. And for somebody who doesn't have children to embody this role that you've described, meaning that she did understand parenting. She did understand how to love children. You don't have to push the human being out of your body to know this. We know this ourselves. But the fact that she could do that in such a way that you wouldn't believe that she wasn't a mother herself says so much about the narrative that is being sold about us.
Spun about us, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, narrative is a big thing right now. I mean, that's one of my favorite words because it so fits the little peg that everyone's supposed to fit into. And if you don't fit the narrative, then it upsets people. It upsets the apple cart, which I call the bandwagon. So I'm always talking about the bandwagon and the narrative, and to beware the bandwagon and to listen for the narrative. Narrative is in everything. And so it's true that I think someone mentioned it earlier that when a Black woman doesn't have a child, it just doesn't match the narrative.
Yeah.
Because typically Black women should have 1 million children with 1 million baby daddy and be on welfare and all the crazy things that, that the narrative has matched over all the years. Look at what they're saying about Kamala Harris now, Vice President Kamala. Someone else mentioned the childless cat lady. And I put a woman with a cat on my latest Canva graphic for my episode, my September episode.
Love it. I love it.
I'm loving all of these childless cat lady memes that we take such serious things and make them unserious.
Yeah.
And I also think that if we don't make them unserious a little bit, we would all just lose our minds. So we just become unserious sometimes.
Something we reflected on because we had a reignite weekend on the weekend just gone, and crazy cat lady being one of the stereotypes is one we talked about. And the reflection here is, why are the childless women the crazy cat ladies? There are parents, there are mums who have cats and dogs. Why aren't they crazy cat people or dog people? It doesn't make any sense why, just because we don't have children, we're the crazy ones. It really is. And, just thinking about what you said, Civilla, around our supposed hyperfertility.
Right.
We're almost twice as likely to have fertility issues as white women. And we are seen as hyperfertile, hence why we have issues when we go into the medical system trying to get help. They don't want to help us. I mean, I think there are other things playing out in that. But you go back to our enslaved times, we were the commodity and we were seen as hyperfertile because, we were there to just breed. We were there to breed like rabbits because we were there to increase their stock.
Right.
So, they had this belief that we were hyperfertile because of that. The reverse of that is, though, that the childless women, the childless enslaved women, would be treated as defective stock, and they would be brutally punished because they couldn't have the children that they were supposed to have. And I think there's another part of that narrative in terms of breeding, because you should be able, we should be able to breed at a drop of a hat and on demand, as it were. And when you can't do that, it baffles.
Right.
That's
the word, baffling. It's baffling, and it does not fit the narrative.
It doesn't fit the narrative, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I also wanted to say, I think there are a couple of comments. I'm trying to keep up with the comments.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going fast.
Yes.
But yeah, the commentary about President Harris as well. What can she do for the future of America if she doesn't have any any stock in it, because she doesn't have any children? And had a conversation. My most recent episode was with one Jody Day, and we talked about how, of course, we have a stock in the future of our countries because we still have to pay taxes. Even if we don't have
believe it or not, yes.
Believe it or not, we still have to pay taxes for good schools, good roads.
But we're actually supporting them to be able to have the children.
Exactly. So it's like, that's the thing about narrative. It doesn't make any sense. We have to make sure that we keep our eyes and ears open when people are talking, because that's a part of, I think, a strengthener for us, is to keep in mind that when people come to us with their narrative, they're about to make no sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. Yeah. Civilla, were you going to say something else about?
No. I may have to plug up my phone. I don't know why my phone is dying, but just in case you lose me, that's what it is. I may have to move my phone so I can plug it up, but I'm still here.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. I'm trying to look at some of these comments as well.
Yes, I'm going through them as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go through them as well. And while we're going through them, I just wanted to mention Rosa Parks, who I think many of us will have heard of. And it's my understanding from doing looking at doing some research, a little bit of research about Rosa, was that she, although she did marry, she didn't have her own children. That's my understanding of it.
Okay.
And Rosa Parks has always been a heroine to me. I've always loved and celebrated her courage, the strength it must have taken for her to do what she did. She was part of the civil rights movement, or at least she came to fame, if you like, came to attention during the civil rights movement, when she decided that she was not going to give up her seat for a white person on a bus. And I just think that the strength that must have taken, with or without being a mother, the strength that must have taken, and to go through, she wasn't the first to do it. I know she wasn't the first, and I'm sure she wasn't the last, but at that time, the strength and the courage that it must have taken for her to go through what she went through, and to stand up and say, actually, well, in fact, she didn't stand up, she sat down, and to say, I'm actually not giving up my seat, and why should I? I just think I love that woman. I love her, and I always think of her, and I always not want to emulate her, but I always want to think about she's an example to me of how of how you can impact the world by standing up and saying, actually, this is not acceptable to me. And just like the notion that being a woman and being a mother are it's not like you can't have one without the other, but being a woman, or being a woman must equate to being a mother. No, I'm not going to accept that now.
No.
There was a time when I was younger when I believed that, because that was the kind of narrative that was spun in my circle, in my life, in my family life. All the women around, the older women had children, and so on and so forth. And that's what I thought was should have happened. And that's what I wanted to happen, in fairness. But I now recognize, as I am growing up, that actually you can be a woman in your own right, a proud and strong, gentle, soulful woman in your own right, with or without children.
Do you know what comes up for me as I think about this is and I'm thinking of myself in this, and then and also the list of Black childless women that I have in front of me, in how hard it is, or how hard I feel as a Black woman to step out, to stand up and step out and put my head above the parapet and go against the grain. You know, we're already doing that because we don't have children. But I think there's something so much more about us as Black women standing up and being seen in the way that we are seen as extraordinary. You know, when I think of the women that I'm celebrating, that I'm holding in mind during this webinar, they were all very different. You know, not one of them you would have said they you know, were shrieking violets. They weren't people that were shying away from anything. They were all, and you know, you've mentioned women as well. They were all very different. There were women that were standing out for various reasons, and they were also not afraid to say no. And we don't always say no in the sense of we go no, but we're saying no, like, you know, Bessie Coleman said no by going to France. And she you know, and getting her aviation pilot license. I think of Ora Washington saying no because she was an amazing athlete who dominated in both tennis and in basketball. I mean, we do see athletes doing this now. You have Olympians that have specialized in you know, different sports. But this was in her time. I think she was in the 50s or 60s. She, you know, she stood out because she dominated in two different sports. You know, you've got you know, Mary Kenner, who I just love thinking of Mary Kenner because she invented the tie for the sanitary towels. I know there's going to be a few of us on the call that remembers the sanitary towels that had the two loops, and you had to have a belt around it. And you know, she invented that, and she had so many other different patterns. But she, you know, these women did not give up. Whatever, you know. I also want to mention Celia Cruz, because if you don't know Celia Cruz, look her up, because she was out there. She oh goodness, I loved watching some YouTube videos of her. You've got to watch her. But it's like the fact that they didn't allow society to go, no, stop, shut up, go back in your box, be quiet. You know, and I think that is such an amazing thing. You know, and when I think about the things I've overcome or the things I encounter, you know, I'm doing this now. They were doing this how many years ago? And it was hard. It's hard now. So let alone how many years ago. And I just really admire, you know, we've said strength so many times, but I just really admire the resilience of just not allowing a system to keep them down.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, Haneefah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Civilla.
I was just going to say, I wonder, as you were talking, Yvonne, I wonder if we will ever have to, we will always have the system to fight against.
Yeah.
It sounds disheartening, but the fact that I feel like the system will always be there, so there will always have to be strong, again, for lack of a better term, strong Black women pushing against it and fighting against it. And I've said before, and I really truly believe this, that Black women are the canary in the coal mines. And we have always been the warning. We have always warned. I don't know about in the UK, but here in the US, whenever something is about to happen, it's Black women that have warned brought the warning. And when people choose not to listen, you know, you can't say we didn't warn you. So that's how it's always been here. And it's sad to say and to wonder, but it feels like we're always fighting against a system.
Yeah.
So there's always going to need to be a strong person. And we're talking about being childless. We're apparently going to have to be strong for quite some time until certain certain communities get caught up in the fact that someone mentioned in the chat earlier, and I mentioned it earlier as well, that 50% of the time, it's the man who has the issue with the lack of children in the marriage. It's not 100% of the time the woman. And so again, people want to believe the narrative.
Yeah.
This is the thing about narrative.
Yeah.
And for us always having to be strong.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if we have time, I'm going to come back on the word strong because as I've already said, I struggle with it. And there's a question in the Q&A that says, are there any narratives from or of Black males when it comes to infertility matters, when there is a narrative about the Black female being the least protected? And, Benjamin Zephaniah.
Yes.
The one that comes to mind. I mean, all my research is about being around Black women because it's women who I support. And I think of my own journey and how myself and other women, I support, I've come across how we are treated or seen in society. That's where my interest lies. However, as Civilla says, it's a 50-50 chance, and there is Black male infertility, and it's not talked about enough. And Benjamin, he did talk about it. He's one of the few Black men, and there's an Asian man, and I can't think of his name, that also created a film. If I remember right, We Are England. I can't remember. I heard him talk at Fertility Fest a few years ago. But there's not many men of color who are talking about it. It's starting to become, the voices are starting to come out, but there are not many of them. And I think, this is a great question, and it's one actually to think about some more and look at, because I think it would be really good to celebrate these Black men and tell their stories as well. There's going to be a lot of stories from my history of Black male infertility that are unheard of.
Stephanie posted Rod Silvers in the
That's the name. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Benjamin Zephaniah is somebody I've been wanting to, I have his name written down, so I'm going to have to start doing my research because he's somebody I want to research for a possible episode 2025.
He's going to be featured at Childless Storyhouse Week, because he's one of the men that is going to be featured at that event, up and coming event. But yeah, he's definitely somebody worth looking into. Wonderful poet. And I remember him talk, because he was interviewed, I think Jessica Hepburn interviewed him at Fertility Fest, and that's where although I'd heard about him before, it was the first time I had seen him and really listened to him. And I remember him talking about the fact that there's another stereotype of black men and fertility as well, and and they have super sperm, and I've come across Black men who feel they have super sperm.
Oh dear.
And they're going to cure my infertility.
Oh dear.
Somehow magically this is going to happen. But he talks about the fact that I think he was on telly, he was on a program that somebody contacted him and say, look, I can cure you, I can help you, and took him on this journey of supposedly trying to help him, but didn't, and left him feeling very sad about the fact that actually he couldn't conceive when they gave him so much hope. But it was the fact that, for me, the fact that he would talk about himself as, it reminded me of my 20s and dating and how Black men saw themselves, and the fact that, I remember my, ex-husband being worried that people were going to turn around and say, what's wrong with him? I know I've used that language with men when I've heard they don't have children. And, Black men are, I suppose our hyperfertility is also about Black men as well. And therefore, how could they be infertile? Where is that coming from? You know, and I know I've come across Asian women who struggle a lot in their family dynamics because they are seen as the problem when they can't conceive, when actually it's usually the man. Well, I say usually, in their cases, it was the male infertility that would not be even entertained.
Yeah.
And I must say, I've noticed a comment in the chat here, just saying that this person has been told by their cousin that they're not a real woman because they don't have children. I mean, you know, I'm left speechless by these things. But although I've not had those words said to me, but I've had that the look. Ooh, what's wrong? I've had that look many times when people have made an assumption. Oh, so how many children do you have again, Haneefah? I actually don't have any. It's that look, yeah, that I've had.
You know, I wonder if it's envy. I'm serious. I wonder if they're
never looked at it like that.
They're jealous. I mean, I'm not just saying it to make myself feel better, but I wonder if there's a deep-seated envy that, for instance, I'm planning on going to the beach in a couple days. It's been a while. And I could just get up and go. I don't have to ask anybody if I can go, if I don't have to make arrangements. You know, in my younger days, I would say I don't have to find a babysitter. I just wonder sometimes if those comments are from a place of envy.
Yeah, somebody's agreeing with you in the chat.
May well be, yeah.
And you know, the fact that they don't like the freedom we have, which I think is very real.
Yes. Day actually mentioned that in our interview too. She mentioned the fact, or she may not be word for word, but she mentioned that our freedom scares people. It scares the patriarchy.
Yes, of course it would do.
What are they going to do with us?
Exactly.
We are a threat. We are seen as a threat.
Right.
We were seen as a threat when they were able to enslave us, and that is why they were able to enslave us. Well, that is the reason why they did it, not why they were able to, why they did it. We were seen as a threat then. So what to say when we are free, liberated, outspoken, confident women? It must be a real scare to them. Something that's actually that I love, and I love to celebrate. But some people, different view.
I just want to, because I'm coming back to this word strong, because somebody has left a comment, which I'm just loving this comment. Or it's a question really. They've said, I am interested to know, how do you be so strong? Where do you get your strength from? What keeps you going and motivated despite social negativity? I try to talk about being childless and I get extremely anxious after I have made a move, stroke, put myself out there, stroke, being vulnerable. It's really hard to keep going. Hear what I've got things to say. Does anybody want to speak before I do?
Please, you go ahead. I'm also aware of time.
I'm conscious of the time. So for me, I remember, and it's something I reflected on over the weekend, is that, no, it was last week actually, when I was taking part in an event. For me, it's anger. My anger is my motivation in all of this, because of the fact that being silenced, being told you're less than, you're not this, you're not this. And mine has been more than being childless. I think being childless and hearing the narratives we have around that probably excelled me into shouting out and saying, I'm not going to accept this anymore. But it really, and I think this is where I love and why I look for childless ancestors, because I wanted to know that I was standing, it was something about the legacy they left me in being able to stand in the way I do. I've always had a rebellious spirit, and it started in my teens, but I can silence myself you know, I've had many experiences where I'll keep myself quiet, keep myself small, because especially as a Black woman, with Black men, and in our everyday worlds, I am seen as too much. And I felt like if I open my mouth, if I give my opinion, if I say this, if I challenge that, people are not going to like me. And to see, and this is why I think it's important that we have heroes as well, because to see these women, especially the times they were doing it in, to have done what they did means that I can do what I'm doing. And actually, I do it and I don't die, which is, you know, I haven't died just from speaking up. I've survived it. And the more I do it, the stronger I get. I remember, you know, a lady called Donna Lancaster, who I follow a lot, said she does what she does in the acceptance that people won't like it. And that really resonated with me. And I hold on to that so strongly, because I'm not here to be liked. It's great to be liked. Come on, we need our friends, we need the support. But I'm not doing what I'm doing to be liked. I'm doing what I'm doing because I need to be heard. And I know I'm paving the way for other people, other women, other people to be heard too. Because I know when I open up, when I challenge, it opens up a wider conversation. And I think that's magical when people start to think differently, start to explore it with me. I'm not sitting here going, I'm right, I know everything. I'm sitting here going, let's look at this in another way. And I think until we can challenge the status quo, unless we challenge the status quo, nothing will change.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I also I think what keeps me strong, what keeps me strong, what keep me focused, is knowing that, I think what something I said earlier on, something that somebody else said, I just know that I am enough. I don't have to fight. I don't have to struggle. I've got nothing to prove. I realize that now. Whereas there would have been a time in my life when I was much younger, when I felt I had to compete with other women who did have children, or who do have children. I had to compete with women who were mothers. I don't have to do that. Not because, and it's nothing to do with the fact that, oh, well, you can't have children now anyway, because, you know, you've gone past that age. It's nothing to do with that. Years ago, I realized, you know what? I don't have to. The only person I have to be in a struggle with, or in a battle with, in a kind way, is myself. Being my better self, more so tomorrow than I was today. The others, I don't have to worry with them at all. They've got their own battles and their own pathways, their own journeys to take. Go ahead with your journey. I just have to focus on that I am enough as I am. Yeah.
I agree. I don't know who said it, but someone said, if everybody likes you, you have a problem.
I've heard this.
Yeah. So you have to live with the fact
or you're
that
doing something wrong.
you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
That effect. Yeah. So if everybody doesn't like you or like your message, and your message is not a message of ugliness, it's a message of uplifting. We're all distributing messages of uplift for other people. And that's another key. The reason I started my whole platform podcast was to help others. I wasn't getting the help I was looking for. I didn't see anybody like me, childless, struggling for 10 years to hang on to my uterus and all the things, you know, that most of us on this chat can probably align with or understand. And there was nobody there that I could see. So I started the podcast. And so I'm trying to help other people. It's not about me, but in helping other people, I found the strength, because I realized that, not everybody's going to like me. Not everybody's going to like my message. And, you know, what am I going to do about it? Will I continue on, or cower and allow other humans who are the same as me? There's no difference. We're all the same. Somebody else said we all put our pants on the same way. All the things. We all do the same things the same way, no matter where in the world we live. We all are the same. So what makes somebody else better than me? What makes me better than someone else? Nothing. Nothing. I will continue with my message because I know I'm helping others, and it has helped me in the long run as well.
Yeah.
That's where my strength comes from.
Yeah. See, I like to think of it as just being different, because there's no, for me, it's no better. It's not about being better or any, it's being different.
Okay.
And, you know, our difference, it's so needed. You know, look at all the women we've talked about, and there's so many more.
Mhm.
If they were all doing the same thing, we would have
Mm.
nothing to talk about. If they were
No.
being all the same way, we'd have nothing to talk about.
Right.
You know, they all did them. They did them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and they shone through it.
They stayed in their lane. They just stay in the moment. I just feel the moment I want to step into somebody else's lane and want to be somebody else and want to, I can admire other women. I can admire other men for what they do and for what they've achieved. But the person that I want to admire first of all is myself, because
Yeah.
I know that I fought a lot of battles to achieve whatever it is I've achieved in life, whether it be in personal life or professional life or whatever. So, you know, I really haven't got the time to be looking at other people, but I can admire others and learn from them. But
Mhm.
wanting to be like them, wanting to bring them down for what they've got or judge them, oh, to me, even just hearing it, just hearing myself say it, it's just a headache. You know,
Mhm.
it's just too much additional stress. Not gonna worry with that.
Yeah.
No.
I'm just kind of seeing some more comments in the chat. And one of them is, you know, we are enough. And I'm again reflecting on the word strong. And I'm just wondering if our ancestors and us on this platform and every woman that's here, is that, are we able to do what we're doing because we know we are enough? You know, it's, I don't know, you know, I don't know if it really is about strength, or maybe strength. I need to look at strength now. I'm really intrigued by this word. But I'm wondering, because I'm looking at my list of my Black childless women, and I'm wondering, was this strength or was it they knew they were enough?
I think that is strength,
Yeah.
though. I think knowing you're enough is a strength.
Yes. Yes.
And I
That's
want to just stop for a second because Melvina posted about how lonely she had felt. And I just want to really make sure everyone understands that it's so important to belong to, it's so important to community. So I'm hoping that if you're not part of the Childless Not by Choice community on some platform, that you will become one. It doesn't have to be mine. I mean, I'd love for everybody to listen to the podcast, but you know, all of our voices resonate in different ways. So I would just say join the community with a voice that resonates with you. Please don't do this alone.
because as you have seen, as you've seen, we've talked about some women who maybe have been a surprise to other women to hear that, oh, so this woman, she's gone, she's done this, and she didn't have children. This woman is that you're just not alone on this journey, and not having. Yes, it can be a lonely journey. There's no doubt about it. I know when the children had left at the weekend and they'd go, the next day, I remember on Sunday, I thought, oh, the house is so quiet. It's so quiet. And then I just put some music on and I was off. Okay, right, we're off to the races again. And, you know, life continues. Yeah, but absolutely right, Civilla. You're not alone. And, you know, being part of a community of like-minded people who you can share your thoughts and your feelings with. I think it's so important. It gives you so much strength. That's what gave me the strength, as I said at the beginning. When I heard Yvonne telling her story of childlessness, it was just a game changer. Absolutely, for me, it was a game changer. So I always give honor to Yvonne for coming forward and being that light for me, that has helped to release and relieve me from the guilt and the sadness and all of the other emotions that I had.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fabulous. We have come to 8:10. We have come to our hour. I can't believe how fast it's gone. I just love there's one comment I just want to read out. It takes strength to be you and be enough. And I just love that. I absolutely love that. I thank everybody for being here today, because I think it's taken a lot of strength and courage to even want to face what we face and sit amongst other sisters to kind of, be inspired and empowered by the wisdom that comes down from each other. So, thank you for all the people who've joined in and your comments in the chat.
Yes.
And it's been fabulous to read. Thank you to Civilla and Haneefah for joining me on this webinar.
Thank you very much.
I am going to invite you both to close with a reflection of today and the women that you have chosen to celebrate today. So, Haneefah.
So my reflection on the women that I've chosen and that I've heard about here is I thank them for the courage that they showed in whatever field of endeavor that they went into, and that has been a light for me and for so many others, and on whose shoulders I stand on today and move forward with my life. I thank them for their example.
Sorry, I was just responding to everybody in the chat. Thanks to everybody for joining the chat, for joining the conversation. It was so fabulous to have you here, and it was wonderful to interact while we were talking. I just, as I said, I chose the 3 ladies that I chose, although one is still alive. Anita is still alive. That they were strong. And I know that strong is a word that we've been kind of tossing around a little bit today, but I appreciated their strength in everything that they had to go through. And I want to garner my strength. And that's what we do, is we look back and we grab some strength and we keep on going. So I hope that, again, you do that as well. And again, join a community. Do not try to do this alone. It'll let all kinds of craziness into your thought process. Join a community. And thanks for being here today.
Yeah. So for me, and I can't remember who, I love my quotes, and I can't remember who said this, but no one makes history by staying inside of the box. And for me, I am so grateful that we have childless ancestors that we can reflect on, because every woman that we've talked about today and all the women that I'm holding in mind that haven't been mentioned, they all stepped outside of the box and they made history. And I am so grateful that we are able to step outside the box and collectively make history today as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.